Welcome aboard as we embark on day 5 of our Viking Grand European River Cruise. Today we end up in the town of Miltenberg, so get ready for a little bit of fun. This was one of our longest continual cruises. We started the previous day in Koblenz and sailed down the middle Rhine, and then in the evening we turned left on the Moine River and sailed overnight until mid-afternoon when we reached our destination of Miltenberg. As with the Rhine River, camping is very popular, but unlike the Rhine, the Moine is not a superhighway in terms of river traffic like we saw on the Rhine. It doubles back on itself. It just seems to be in no rush to get to the mouth at Mainz. One of the ancient names for the river is Moine, and is said to mean crooked snake, which is a very apt description indeed. You'll notice that the railings and equipment on the top deck are all folded down, and for very good reason. And as we approach this lock and go under this bridge, you can see exactly why. Notice that even the pilot house has been lowered, and there is simply no room under the bridge. This was the way it was for almost the entire length of the Moine. Here we enter one of the many locks on the Moine, and it takes a while to go through these, hence the long trip overnight down the Moine. Many of the locks are next to power plants with dams on them, and we simply wait until the water is pumped into the lock, raising the ship 10 to 15 feet or so. Then the lock gates open and we sail into the higher part of the Moine River. There are a total of 34 locks along the Moine, along with 33 hydropower stations. The time spent going through the locks makes a fairly long cruise. There are many charming little villages along the Moine, and unfortunately we sailed most of it overnight, and it was only the next morning that we were able to see some of the villages. During lunch, we sailed through Miltenberg on the way to the city of Freudenberg, and simply because there was no parking spaces left in Miltenberg. Then we took a bus back from Freudenberg, past Bergfreudenberg, finally until we reached Miltenberg. Before boarding the buses in Freudenberg, I decided to get the drone out to get a good look at the Viking Vili. And as you can see, it is truly a long ship, but you can also see how everything on the top deck has been folded down so that we could go through the locks. And it turns out in a couple days, not even this was low enough. So the bus finally arrived in Miltenberg, and we began our walking tour at the Rathaus. Now as we look up at the Rathaus, you will see that there are open windows with no screens, and every window has a bunch of flowers underneath it. That is their method of dealing with insects. The insects get attracted to the flowers and hence never go in the screenless window. So we begin our walking tour. Now the population of Miltenberg is only 9,200. Now when the Viking tours arrive, the village is not the quiet little village that it normally is. Miltenberg has a very fairy tale charm about it, with many half-timbered houses and house decorations that are just absolutely wonderful. The fairy tale's not far from the truth, as the brothers Grimm grew up in the town of Hanau, just north of here. This particular section of town is called the Schwarzviertel, or the Black Quarter, but it is nothing sinister. It's just the fact that the streets are so narrow and the buildings high that not much sunlight reaches the street. We now come on the Gasthaus Zum Riesen, which means giant, and this inn is the oldest establishment in the country, and it's 425 years old. It's currently owned by the Faust Brewing Company, more in a minute, and those who have visited here includes 2 Holy Roman Emperors, Napoleon, and Elvis Presley. This guest house is an architectural gem and was renovated last in 1590 using 100 oak logs donated by the town council. The city itself was not damaged during World War II, so most of it is still intact. The facades on the buildings are exquisite and really charming, and it's worth just the time to walk down the street and stop and stare at the architecture. After looking at the decorations on the side of the house, we walk further down the street a little bit to the Alte Rathaus, which is the old city hall. Interestingly enough, on the door portal is the high water marks. The top one is in 1754, and the bottom one is in 1845, and that's how high the Main River went, right here in the middle of the city. This particular place has been here since 1333, and the beams certainly show it. And here we are again with just a couple of us on the walking tour. We saw these inscriptions in many doors throughout Catholic Germany, and it's a common custom to mark the doors on the Feast of Epiphany, and the marking's done and usually includes the initials C, M, and B, which stands for the three wise men. The 2023 is the year. Nearing the end of the tour groups themselves weren't as close together, and you got an idea what the city streets look like probably during normal times. There were also lots of shopping opportunities, and there was also a Hunde-Tankstelle, which is a gas station for dogs. Some of the storefronts were very, very well decorated and had lots of nice stuff in them. Unfortunately, we only had time to wander into one or two of them. So we and several other tour groups wandered finally into the Altermarkt, which is the old marketplace and is right on top of St. Jacobus Church. Many cities in Germany have funny nicknames for the inhabitants, and in Miltenberg they are called Staffelbrunzers, and Brunzen is the local word for urinate, hence they made this statue to honor the Miltenbergers. There was time enough to take a walk up to the Miltenberg Castle. Instead, we chose to go back down by the riverside and get the drone out and get some overviews of the city. You can see some remnants of the city walls just above the city itself, and you can see how long and narrow the city is, and we're really looking over the Black Quarter, the Schwarzviertel. As we turned down towards the end of the town, we saw what looked like a carnival. Well, it turned out it was a little more than that. It was actually Miltenberg's version of Oktoberfest. It takes place the last Sunday in August and goes to the first Sunday in September. And this is a wooden beer tent constructed for just this 2-week event in Miltenberg. There is also fun for the whole family with a big carnival area and a huge Ferris wheel. But we opted to go back to the beer tent and try some of the local beer from the brewery Faust. We were really surprised at the extent of the construction of the beer tent. All wood floors, just with a canvas ceiling. And of course the traditional beer tent band. As I said, the local beer here is from the Faust brewery, and it is only available here in Miltenberg. It is not exported anywhere else. You can only get it in liter steins, ein Maß, but it's easily shareable, along with the pretzel, if you will. Well, that's all the time we had, so we headed back to the bus for the short drive back up to Freudenberg and have a little dinner, well, actually dessert, as we set sail for Würzburg for the next day. Well, that does it for Miltenberg, and we are very glad to have you along. If you like this video, please take a moment and subscribe to our channel.